to the channel, and today is my winter wrap up. I'm going to go through the 10 books I read from December through to February, and I'm going to rank them in the order in which I kind of enjoyed it the most and would recommend them the most to yourselves. I'm going to start with the lowest ranked book. So at number 10 is a book I wouldn't necessarily recommend to everyone. It is a book I ranked, I gave 3 stars, and that is Live and Let Die. So this is an original James Bond story by Ian Fleming. It's the second book in, publication order, timeline order for James Bond, but it has some issues. It is very racially insensitive. It is very much of the time it was written, and it has not aged particularly well. I gave it 3 stars. It is enjoyable in places though. I also would not wholeheartedly recommend this next book unless you are reading Malazan, and specifically if you're reading Malazan Book of the Fallen. I believe that this is very helpful. This is Knight of Knives by Ian C. Esselmont. Very, very helpful middle book in that series should you want some supplementary material. I did give it more than 3 stars, but not necessarily one I would recommend others that aren't reading Malazan read. Next up, giving this about 3.5 stars, was a book in the Witcher series, and this is The Tower of the Swallow. Very entertaining Witcher book. Wasn't one of the strongest in the series for me personally, also wasn't the weakest, but yeah, Tower of the Swallow was a very entertaining fantasy novel, and if you're reading The Witcher, don't get put off, keep on going, because this book was still pretty decent. Above those, I had a story I read from The Complete Chronicles of Conan, that is Black Colossus. Possibly my favourite Conan story so far. Really, really enjoyed that. Almost got 4 stars for me. Really, really good Conan story. Good adventure novel, this one. Really enjoyed myself with Conan this year. But above all of those, a book I gave 4 stars was The Odyssey by Homer. And specifically, this is for this translation. It is a prose translation, though it does keep some of the kind of poetical work there. It is the Penguin Cloth-Bound Classics version of this story. Yeah, this is the story of Odysseus. It's kind of like a sequel to the Iliad. Really, really enjoyed my time with Homer once again. A good solid 4 stars there. So what could possibly rank above such a great classic? Well, my return to John Gwynne did not disappoint. This is a semi-sequel series to The Faithful and the Fallen. This is a Time of Dread, and it takes place several years after those novels. But yeah, it's still John Gwynne. It's still great stuff, great character work, really, really great action in there as well. Yeah, I gave it more than 4 stars. I really recommend people continue from Faithful and the Fallen and continue on in the series, because it's well worth it, and the books don't really go down too much in quality. Above that, I have my return to the Asian sagas. This is King Rat by James Clavell. It's a book that kind of come out of nowhere. About halfway through the novel, I realised how engaged I was with the characters, and how engaged I was in finding out what happens to this, this concentration camp effectively, and ultimately how it all turns out. James Clavell has a way of writing people's lives that is really, really compelling, and King Rat is no different there. The top 3 are going to be very fantasy heavy. This is a fantasy channel. I love reading my fantasy. I have 3 very high quality fantasy recommendations for you for the top 3. The first of those is Crown of Swords. This is book 7 in The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, and it's another great entry. Yeah, keep reading. People say there's a slog around now. I've not found it. I found the last book, book 6, was the best in the series. It was a book of the year contender for me last year, and book 7, very, very entertaining as well. My first foray into the Stormlight Archive did throw up one of last year's book of the year contenders in The Way of Kings. Not a perfect novel, but a 4.5 star epic fantasy that I really, really enjoyed. But it was knocked off the top spot. I think this is 2 quarters running, which is surprising because it didn't do it for the first 2 quarters I was reading this series. And that's Malazan Book of the Fallen. The Bone Hunters is another 4.5 star epic fantasy read. And it is the best book, I believe, that I read in the winter. So book of the quarter, once again, I think it went in the autumn, it went to Stephen Erickson, and in the winter, it goes once again to Stephen Erickson. Malazan's really stepped up in quality, I think. Since book 3, they've just got better and better. Book 6, The Bone Hunters, is arguably the best in the series so far. Really, really enjoyed this one. And yeah, Stephen Erickson takes it once again. You won't see me for a few months on these wrap-ups now. I will be back in the summer to wrap up the spring books, and we'll see if Stephen Erickson can go 3 for 3. Unlikely, but let's see. There are some really, he's up against some really big hitters in the spring. I want to get back to Agatha Christie and Leo Tolstoy, Philip K. Dick. It's going to be a knife fight in the spring for sure. I feel like Stephen Erickson had it a little bit easier in the winter, but we shall see. I'll catch you in the next video.